What's up everybody, I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2021 Audi RS7. So the RS7 is the top of the lineup here for the A7 and the S7, and now the RS7 is the highest performing version. It's very, very impressive, and I did a full driving review as well. I'll link that above if you want to hear how this vehicle drives. But the interior in this thing really wows as well. I mean, you know, obviously it's very bold on the outside, and it has an interior to match with all these, you know, screens all over the place, the nice materials. Everything is just very impressive in here.
Yeah, it's super luxurious, and you just feel like you're in some kind of a supercar. I think it's really nice in here.
Yeah, and I mean, that's appropriate considering the supercar performance. This thing will do a 3 second 0 to 60, so it'll keep up with all the supercars. And it does it all for an actually fairly reasonable, whenever you consider the performance, $115,000 starting price for these. This one, as tested, is $125,000, and it feels every penny of that in here as well. I mean, everything just, it smells expensive, it feels expensive with all the materials and the textures and everything. We'll get into all that, but the tech in the Audis is always one of the, you know, they're one of the best as far as the tech, and so it just wows you in basically every way. But anyway, sitting down in these seats, that's the first thing here. They're very impressive. I love how you have this like quilting pattern. It's kind of high tech, and just, you can also get different kinds of stitching and stuff, but looks great here with this rock gray stitching, it's called. I also like the RS logo embossed in the back of it here. And they're soft, comfortable seats. They have all the usual adjustments here. They're heated and cooled, but I'm kind of surprised. Usually with vehicles like this that are this high end, you have you can get massage as an option. This one does not have that option, but usually you can adjust the bolstering. And I've been trying to find a way to adjust the bolstering, and I can't find any way to change it. It's just changing the lumbar. So kind of surprised about that for a vehicle this sporty. You know, most other vehicles this competes with, you have all kinds of adjustments for the seats to make them really nice and tight. And I believe there's an upgraded seat this one does not have, so maybe that's what's missing. But they're still really great seats otherwise.
Yeah, and especially for the passenger, you have all of your normal power controls, and so it's really nice that you're able to do the same exact thing as the driver, and you're able to have all of that same comfort. I think that these seats are really cool looking. They're racy looking, but yeah, it is weird you can't adjust the bolstering.
Yeah. So, and I also, you do have memory on the driver's side here, but you don't have memory on the passenger side. In a cheaper vehicle, not a big deal, but in something this high-end, typically that's something you expect to see as well. But I believe that is, again, part of that upgraded seat package. It also is kind of funny, though, a vehicle this expensive has a manual thigh extension. Usually you have power thigh extensions in other vehicles. Just, yeah, a little bit of an interesting thing there. But
yeah,
again,
for it being like 125 grand, I just think you should probably get that.
Yeah, so, but I think that is probably, again, part of those upgraded seats. But anyway, still really great seats. I mean, the cooling works actually really well, and they're really good seats, so I don't want to downplay them, but yeah, might be worth spending a little bit extra for those upgraded seats. Anyway, moving on to the steering wheel here in the RS7. It is very special, very cool feeling. I love that it's also not super thick. Like BMW and even Mercedes on their AMG models have these enormous steering wheels. You have to have huge hands to even wrap your hands all the way around the wheel. This, it's still, you know, sporty feeling, but you can get a nice good grip on it since it's a little bit thinner. Really tapers down towards the 9-3 grip as well, which I love. Really nice paddle shifters here on the back. I also appreciate that there aren't a gazillion buttons on the front of this thing either. You just have a few buttons, and this is really rare in modern cars to have this few buttons. It's actually really refreshing, honestly. And I also love how Audi continues to put the cruise controls down here on a separate stock. Instead of having 15 more buttons on the steering wheel, you just have this little stock. I think it nicely cleans up the steering wheel. I wish every car company would copy Audi and do that for the cruise control, because I think it's much better to do that. And so yeah, it's a really great wheel here. It's also heated as well, which is worth noting. Moving on to the gauges here in the RS7, they're very sweet looking. So these are familiar if you've been used to any other of the new RS models. They're really high tech though, and look very fresh and awesome. They're 12.3 inches for the Audi virtual cockpit, so same size as any other Audi digital gauges, but you know, the fonts and the graphics are really, really cool on this. So especially what I love is, you know, you have this very futuristic kind of, but almost kind of 80s feeling bar tack there. If you remember some of the stuff from the 80s that had digital gauges, it was very similar to that. This is obviously kind of, I think, pays homage to that a little bit. But I also love how when you go to the RS modes, it gives you this runway style tack, and it's really, really sweet. The only thing that's interesting about it is that as you're accelerating, the RPMs are rising towards you. So they're actually like dropping. And for a runway, I would expect them to be going the other way. It's a little bit disorienting when you're manually shifting, because it's like I was just having to recalibrate my brain. No matter what mode you're in, you see your power and your torque figures there of how much the vehicle is actually using at any point in time, and that's a really cool touch as well. I also love how Audi does some of the best map views, so you can have this all spread out and have different configurations for everything. You can have your media, whatever you want displayed there, but having the map as the entire screen is really cool, especially if you're not sure where you're going. It's really handy. So I absolutely love these gauges. I think I think Audi has done some of the coolest gauges in the business. You also have a really cool heads-up display here in the RS7, and normally it'll just show you like your speed and the speed limit, but whenever you go into that RS mode, it'll show you again another huge tack, and it's very bright, high resolution for that head-up display, and one of the better ones in the performance vehicle segment. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, though, this is where it really gets even more high-tech. I mean, these double screens are very rare. Aside from a few other competitors like Land Rover and stuff, hardly anyone does these double screens right now, and it's really impressive. But it's not just the screens that are impressive, it's the software that they run, which I think works so well. So this top screen is a 10.1-inch touchscreen, and it's not maybe the biggest screen out there these days, but it works so well, and I think it fits. It is plenty. I don't think you need anything more than this, but I love how each one of these tiles, you can move them different places, so you can customize this and configure it to exactly how you want it to be set up, and it's always very responsive. I also love how it's kind of force touch, so you actually, instead of just tapping the screen, you actually get a little bit of a click every time you press down on the screen, and I think that really helps you to, especially whenever you're driving and stuff, to not be as distracted, wondering if it actually registered your touch, because you always get that little haptic feedback. And again, I think Audi's the only one that does this currently, and I think it is brilliant. I wish every car company would copy them, because I think it just makes it so much easier and more gratifying to use.
Yeah, and I think it's really nice to be able to get that feedback for yourself, because it's nice to have buttons, but when you don't have buttons, it looks nice and clean and really nice, but having that haptic touch makes it even better, because you're just pushing a button, but it's not giving you a million buttons.
Yeah, it's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have buttons, but you don't have buttons. I think it's great. I love it. The only thing that's unfortunate is whenever you go into Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, then that part of the screen doesn't do that haptic touch anymore, and then it's just, you have to revert your brain back to like, okay, now this is just a normal touchscreen again. It's only the Audi specific menus that have that. But yeah, it's wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, by the way, and it worked every single time that I got in here. It connected really quickly. It was flawless. There wasn't any lag or glitchiness, which is something that can't be said for a lot of other companies that are still figuring out this wireless CarPlay thing. So the fact that this is reliable and flawless is actually a huge compliment, and so they just really have done a good job with this system. It's also really easy to tune radio stations, things like that. You still do have a volume knob down here, which feels great, and more of these nice feeling materials, which we'll talk more about in a second here, but it looks great too.
Yeah, and it is ever so slightly tilted towards the driver, but I was able to use everything very easily while we were driving. And also, the best thing about the volume knob is that it's all the way on the passenger side. The driver can adjust the volume on their steering wheel, but then again, the passenger can adjust the volume without having to reach super far. So it is really nice.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a perfect placement, and that makes sense. So many other car companies, have steering wheel controls for the driver, and then another volume knob up here really close to the driver, and it's like, why? I like that Audi thought about the passenger.
Exactly.
So they really, you can tell they really thought through this interior very well, not only for the driver and everything being driver centric like everyone loves to talk about these days, but also for the passenger, which is kind of what we're trying to highlight with these videos as well. There's oftentimes someone in your passenger seat that also has an experience.
Not everybody drives alone, honestly, and there's so many of these cars that are family cars. This could be a family car and your family car. So just think about the fact that the passenger can easily control these things and can easily be involved in your car driving experience.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's a really great infotainment system there. And then moving down to the second screen here, which is about an 8-inch screen, also very high resolution, also has that awesome haptic feedback, and typically it'll just be using your climate control and stuff, but you also can use it to input navigation instructions while you have the nav up here running. And so it has a couple different functions here. There's also few other little auxiliary buttons and things like that. But I love how, you know, everything's kind of animated and just very crisp, and again, everything just feels so high-tech in this. And this is where Audi really, again, nails the high-tech feeling. And that's why I think people love Audi interiors, because it just always feels like it's a little bit newer and a little bit more high-tech than most of the others out there. And then the few actual buttons you have are right beneath that for a drive mode selector, and even that stuff is also capacitive touch for those buttons. And then you just have a couple hard buttons here for your safety systems and parking stuff. And but even just like the shifter here is so cool feeling, and just this, like, it feels like it's carved out of a solid chunk of aluminum. It has the leather on it. You know, the engine start button with a little red ring. I mean, everything just feels so cool. And also this one has the executive package, so that gives you extended leather. So you'll see leather on the tops of the doors here, on all your elbow points, even down by your knees here. Unfortunately, there is like a little bit of a harder plastic here, but it's even that's covered in satin, so it's not just like cheap hard plastic. Like, they didn't overlook anything in this vehicle.
It also has this carbon fiber like carbon twill, which is super cool. It's kind of like basket weaved into each other, and it gives you this really nice texture and this really nice feel. And I think that it's super unique, and I love it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that it's just refreshing to see, again, a little bit of creativity, something a little different. Everyone does glossy carbon fiber, you know, on their racy interiors, and that's fine, but like, Audi's like, hey, let's like not do the glossy thing because it attracts so many fingerprints. This, instead, you have no fingerprints. It, you know, just looks really good.
Yeah, but I would say on the center console there is this piano black plastic, and it's also on this front too, so it makes the screen blend into it. So that's smart, and you're not really touching this, but where you are touching is down here. So I can see it right now. It does have fingerprints and scratches a little bit all over it.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they put more of that carbon down there instead, you know, to kind of, yeah, make that a little more, I don't know, abuse proof, I guess.
Yeah.
Because this car only has 6,000 miles on it, and there's already scratches from previous people. I also love around this area and a bunch of different areas here, you have awesome ambient lighting in this vehicle. That Quattro badge on the dashboard lights up. You have these strips that run all down here, and it really looks awesome at night. And, you know, again, makes you feel you're in something very special and very exciting. But I mean, all the other materials are awesome too. I mean, even like, you know, you have so many metal buttons and switches, and everything has a nice weight to it.
And you also have the suede on the doors, which is a really fun touch.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't go overboard with the suede like a lot of other companies do, but yeah, great to have that. Storage space here in the RS7 is one area where maybe it's not as plentiful as some of the competitors. So, I mean, you have a decent sized pocket here in the door, and that's nice, although it doesn't really have, you have a little bit of a bottle cutout, but it's not huge. But then coming over to the middle, all you have is 2 cup holders, a little slot to hold the key, and a power outlet in there. So not really much storage. You have this center armrest, but you open that up and you'll see it's really shallow, and you just have a wireless phone charger there and another tiny little slot, and you'll see 2 USB-C jacks, and that's it. So, you know, I mean, this vehicle's sporty and stuff, so, you know, you're not going to get as much storage space as you do in some huge SUV or something, but you know, I do think some of the competitors still do have a little bit of extra storage. I think mostly you're sacrificing a bin up front here because you have this extra screen. If you didn't have that screen and you had some smaller controls for the climate or something, then you'd probably be able to carve out a little spot there. You don't have that. So it just comes down to, you know, what would you rather have? I think, you know, most of the stuff that I typically do put in the middle, I just ended up putting in the door, and I was fine with that. You know, it's just going to come down to how much stuff you keep inside your vehicle. But just keep in mind, you know, you just don't have a ton of storage space up front here. One other little thing I wanted to mention about this infotainment system, though, is that it's tied into this Bang & Olufsen 3D stereo system. So it's a pretty nice 3D sounding stereo. This isn't the top system, though. So this system has 16 speakers and 730 watts, but you can go up to a 19 speaker stereo that has 1,820 watts if you're willing to pay about $4,900 extra. So that's a big ticket item there on the options list. But if you want to pay almost $5,000 for a really high-end stereo, I mean, you get over double the wattage and stuff. That's probably going to be the choice if you are obsessed with audio. I'm not an audiophile, and I was really impressed with this normal system. It still sounds really good. It's very clear and crisp. You know, I don't think it's the best system I've heard. You know, I think that something like the brand new Cadillac Escalade was a little bit more impressive with its stereo experience. I think mostly, you know, they did a pretty good job with the whole 3D effect, which I personally really love. I know some audiophiles don't like that stuff, but I think there just could have been a little more dimension in this system, and I had it cranked up all the way for the surround effect and all that kind of stuff, but regardless, it is still so incredibly clear and crisp that, you know, you really have to be nitpicking to find anything to complain about with this stereo. I think it's fantastic, and I think just about everybody's going to love it. It sounds really, really good. But anyway, moving on to the back seat here in the RS7, it's also really good as well. So, you know, this one has, you know, it's a 5-seater setup. I saw some people talking about the RS7 only having 4 seats, but this one's a 5-seater still, and it's really soft, comfortable seats back there. You know, I'm 5'9", I'm sitting behind myself. I have still several inches of legroom to spare. Headroom isn't abundant, you know, thanks to the fastback roof here. You know, it's not going to be as much headroom as you might get in like an RS6 Avant, for example. But, you know, still, it works, you know. Maybe if you're over 6 feet tall, you might not have a ton of space back there, but you know, I think it should be comfortable enough for most people. You also, when you look forward, you'll see that there's dedicated air vents as well as 2 more USB-C jacks back there. There's also cup holders that drop down there in the middle and pockets in those doors. And also, if you are someone who's using this as a family vehicle, we actually had our rear-facing car seat in the back there for our little baby girl, and she fit back there pretty well. So with the seat in its position, so there was enough clearance in the back there. Again, me being 5'9", sitting in the front passenger seat here, I still had about an inch or so of legroom to spare. It wasn't incredibly spacious or anything, but it totally does work.
Right, and sitting back there with our daughter, I think that it was really comfortable. I didn't have any issues with legroom or anything like that. I'm 5'5", but I think it was really comfy back there.
Trunk space in the RS7 is really awesome. So you have this huge hatch, and I think that's one of the coolest parts about the A7 body style in general, is it's very practical and very usable. It's a super long hatch. It's not like it's just a little hatch or something. Like, it is so long. I mean, I feel like you could fit like almost a dinner table in the back of this thing. Like, it's so big back there. It's also pretty wide, and I mean, it's not incredibly deep or anything, but again, just because of the sheer amount of length you have there, I mean, this is a very practical vehicle. So again, if you are someone who wants to have one of the coolest family vehicles out there, I mean, this thing will serve that duty very, very well. Also,
for anything you want to put in the front, you could just throw it in the back.
That's true. Yeah, if you don't need to access stuff, you know, yeah, you definitely, they make up for the lack of storage space with all the storage in the back. Also, you can lift up the floor there. You'll see there's a little spare tire kind of kit and roadside kind of kit there. So you have a little bit of extra space underneath there. A lot of the other competitors just are sedans, or, you know, 1 or 2 of them might have a wagon, you know. Now, I think the biggest competitor to this, honestly, is the Audi RS6 Avant. So, you know, basically it's the same exact vehicle, just the wagon instead of this hatchback. So it's going to come down to, you know, what your preference is for body styles. The RS6 Avant, though, it's worth noting, is about $5,000 cheaper. Not like you're counting pennies when you're paying this kind of money, but, you know, personally, I think if you want the maximum amount of versatility, go for the wagon. Wagons are really cool. You still have this awesome, you know, driving experience, and you know, you save yourself $5,000 as a cherry on top. So for my money, I'd probably go RS6 Avant, but I love the RS7. I think it's super cool. And you do have a cooler look, I think, to the back end. This taillights and stuff look a little more futuristic. And I mean, no matter which one you pick, you can't go wrong. Both of these vehicles are incredibly cool looking. Got so many looks driving around in this thing this week. I mean, it makes a statement. It impresses everyone that sees it, especially in Tango Red like this one. It's hard to miss. But yeah, it's an awesome, awesome vehicle. Be sure to go watch the driving review if you want to hear, again, how this drives. But yes, that's about all of our thoughts on this interior. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.